Grand Portage Resources recently completed the 2018 drill program on its 100% controlled Herbert Gold Discovery property located in the prolific Juneau Belt in southeast Alaska. Drill results are expected through late 2018. Past drill results included numerous multi-ounce gold assays on multiple veins. Grand Portage trading symbols are GPG on the TSX Venture, GPTRF on the OTCQB, and GPB on Frankfurt. For more information, please visit our website, grandportage.com.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Kris Sims, BC Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. Welcome back to the show, Kris.
Thank you so much.
Kris, breaking news as we speak. Finally, we're going to shed some light on the dark inner secret doings of the BC Legislature's internal books.
Yes, this is excellent news. We have just heard from Minister Mike Farnworth, who is, of course, on the government side of the aisle, who said that he supports what some other watchdogs have been calling for along with the CTF. We weren't party to the letter, but we've been calling for the same thing, and that is freedom of information being applied to the BC Legislature. Now, what that means in English is that those staffers that you see, like the clerk, the speaker, the sergeant-at-arms, they're usually the people in the little black and white suits in the middle of the aisle in the legislature that is supposedly nonpartisan staff, will now be subject to the same sort of investigations by journalists or citizens, what have you, as MLAs can be and, say, managers at BC Hydro can be. What that means is say they go on a trip or they incur some sort of expense or they want to spend a lot of money on a fancy cover for their budget, like they did federally. That means that as a journalist, or even as a citizen, depending on if that's what you want to do, you can send in a Freedom of Information request, usually referred to as an FOI. Most places you're able to do that, but for some reason, officers of the BC Legislature, up until now, including the clerk, including the Sergeant-at-Arms, and the Speaker's office, were exempt from that. And there's no reason for that. If there's some sort of massive security issue, of course that would simply be redacted. The fact that they were immune from FOI oversight until now is not right. And so that is why we've been calling ever since the bombshell Speaker's report came out from Speaker Darryl Plecas. That's what we've been calling for, FOI. And now we're just hearing from the minister who said, yeah, I agree with these 3 recommendations that were being made by separate watchdogs. And they were to have these legislature officials subject to FOI, to strengthen the protection for whistleblowers. That's, of course, people who say, hey, I'm seeing wrongdoing and I'm speaking up about it. And they actually made a recommendation to have some sort of an ombudsperson or an overseer take a look at appointments and hirings that go on at the BC Legislature to make sure that they're based on merit. That one we're not as familiar with as far as the recommendations go, but on the surface, more transparency sounds like a good thing.
Protecting whistleblowers is vital because we hear up to 20 people were let go after they pointed out to the Speaker of the House at the time, Linda Reid, that they suspected something shady was going on with expenses.
Yes, and that was actually one of the most disturbing parts of the Plecas report. While a lot of the spending was so out of this world and bizarre, I mean, everything from whiskey cakes to gunpowder mustard to a wood splitter, so it took up a lot of the oxygen. But there was a portion of that report, and what the Speaker provided verbally was that he was hearing from people, like you said, up to 20 people who were allegedly fired for raising concerns about stuff like this, about misspending, things like that. That can't happen. If you're doing your job and you're working hard and staying within the rules and you see something strange going on, that's very important for you to speak up, and you should not be scared of losing your job for it. And so that is a very important part of the Speaker's report, and so I'm really glad to see the minister responsible saying, yeah, we're going to take this seriously and take a look at it. The catch here, though, and what's key here, is that all of these recommendations and any potential legislation to change these rules and the way we oversee things need to go to the Legislative Affairs Management Committee, known as LAMC. They need to approve these changes. And sitting on that committee are politicians of all stripes, MLAs of all stripes. So now the next stage will be to keep an eye on these folks and inform them that we expect them to make these changes and to actually go through with it. Don't just talk about it.
How long do you think they thought they could get away with just spending money willy-nilly? Is there a huge sense of entitlement around the BC legislature?
You know, based on the report, and again, we're still waiting. As of today, we're still waiting to hear from the people named in that speaker's report. We have not heard their quote-unquote side of things. So we need to hear from them. Maybe they do have great explanations for all of this. Maybe it was paid back. We don't know. We need to hear from them. But my concern is, based on what the speaker said, just on that report on the one side of it, it's astounding. And these bills go back, I think he was able to look back around 18 months or so. There's a couple of bills on there for liquor that are from, I think, 2012. So they go back a bit further. But it's shocking. The receipts are shocking. And I went through around 600 of them the weekend before last. I sat down, I opened it up, I cracked it open, I looked through much of the data. And you could almost start getting a rhythm to it. You'd see, a trip going over to London, England again, and then you'd see a receipt for $500 Bose noise-canceling headphones for air flight. And you'd see multiple hits to the parliamentary gift shops in London. And you'd see multiple bills for chauffeured services over there as they're driving all over the place in the UK, ostensibly to have meetings about whatever, including things like security. And you could start getting a flow to it, and then lo and behold, on the return trip, you'll see a receipt for luggage being purchased at the departure lounge. I saw that both at Heathrow in London, England, and at the Hong Kong airport. You see another receipt for a lot of expensive luggage. So the amount of things that were being expensed, seemingly without any sort of checks and balances, should make a lot of taxpayers feel sick.
Isn't that exactly what the Speaker of the House, Darryl Plecas, said would happen when you saw his report? He said people will be ill.
It's interesting, when I heard him say that, and he stood there and said, if taxpayers do not want to throw up after reading my report, I will resign. I thought, well, that's a pretty bold statement, but not kidding. After I sat there all weekend looking through this stuff, I felt nauseous. So I think he can keep his job for a while longer at least. I had to literally take some Pepto.
And I have to take any allegation made by Darryl Plecas pretty seriously because he's a criminology professor by trade. His textbooks are what are used to train criminologists to investigate crimes and how to do it right. So, if he literally wrote the book on how to investigate, you'd think he knows what he's talking about.
This is the thing. On the surface, and again, we really, really need to hear from the people named in this report, because right now we're just going off, quote, one person's side of things. But if you look at his one side of things, yeah, he comes pretty much from the outside. He doesn't appear to be a career politician. His background, his PhD, is in criminology and public education, exactly as you said, literally how to teach people to conduct investigations. And so if what he's saying is true, in that he saw what was going on, kind of went undercover, went along with it so far as he could follow things, and kept all these records, which apparently he did, because he posted all of them online. Everybody can go to the BC Legislature, by the way. You can read the report, and I strongly encourage you, look through these expenses yourself. They're called exhibits. Click on the exhibits, and you can read through, you can see all the original receipts. They've been scanned into the computer. You'll see everything there. And so, yeah, it's really important to take what the speaker says seriously any day. And now we've got this really provocative report, which is why it's concerning that it's taking so long to hear from those who are named in it. And again, maybe there is some big explanation to all of this. And if so, we really, really need to hear that explanation, because it looks like taxpayers' dollars were spent, and a lot of them.
Kris, when is a piece of luggage not a piece of luggage?
See, this is the funny thing that I noticed. Not funny in the way that it's hilarious, but funny and
it's
strange.
like a funny sick, like if you're a guy stopping a slap shot the wrong way.
Exactly, going, what? What is this? So, some of your listeners might have heard a lot about luggage. And yes, a lot of luggage was purchased, as far as I can see. They purchased luggage at Heathrow, they purchased luggage at Hong Kong. And so, what's interesting is there's one receipt from the Hong Kong Departure Lounge level airport. It's a little boutique. And I can't pronounce it properly, but it sounds like Victorionics. And Victorionics apparently makes fancy luggage. Who knew? So I'm looking at this receipt, and one of the items on there is typed out on the receipt printer, Maverick Large Black Edition. And it's between $700 and $800 Canadian, depending on the exchange rate in Hong Kong dollars at the time. And next to the item, Maverick Large Black Edition, somebody has written in ballpoint pen, luggage, and circled it, saying, like, this is luggage. So I wanted to know what a $700 or $800 suitcase actually looked like, because I have no idea. That thing had better have lights on it and have music playing. So I went to the website and looked up not just the name of the item, but the item number on that website. It actually came up as a watch. It came up as a man's large black wristwatch. And so, again, why? Why is this showing up as a wristwatch? Why is it marked luggage on this receipt? Like, we just need to know. We need these questions answered. And there was another thing that I noticed, too. There was several times you could see where camera equipment had been purchased. So, you know, an $800 tripod for a camera. An Olympus zoom camera in red. And what's interesting is that one of those red cameras, that red Olympus camera, was purchased on December 20th of 2018. And then right next to it, on the same expense form from the same store, is a blue camera case. But if you look carefully at that receipt, it's from December 20th, 2017. It's a year apart, but on the same day. So is this simply just a printer error? Probably, because the receipts look exactly the same, like they were picked up on the same day. But nonetheless, there's a change in the date. Like, why are they a year apart? And again, if this is just a simple computer error at the store, that's fine. But we need to know those answers, and we need to know also, why is this stuff being expensed in the first place?
Well, you know, I could understand if they were buying new robes or wigs or whatever for their formal role here at the BC Legislature, which, you know, in many ways copies the original Parliament. But I don't recall, you know, the original Parliament needing Olympus blue cameras or Maverick watches.
Yes, exactly. This is the thing. And a lot of, you know, people, you know, and that's fine if people want to focus on it. Some people were focusing on robes and the big fancy hats and cufflinks and even ties and stuff. And you know what? I didn't even bother. I let all that stuff go because you're right. You don't go buy a speaker's robe or a clerk's robe or one of those types of fancy robes. You don't pick that up at the Bay. So you need to order that stuff. I get it. But again, why are we paying for new cameras? Why was a $2,500 Sony camcorder expensed? Why? Why were 3 separate Apple TVs expensed? Why? Why were, I think, 24 magazines subscribed to at taxpayers' expense? And I mean everything. You name it. It is everything from the New York Times to the London Times to Arizona Roads, Palm Springs Life, electric bicycles, Wired, Harper's, you name it. They've got a subscription to it. And apparently taxpayers are paying for it.
We'll have more with Kris Sims right after this.
Hi, I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Magnum Gold Corp, MGI and the TSX Venture Exchange. A 2015 drill program on the LH property intersected several high-grade gold intersections, including 11 meters of 20.66 grams per ton gold. Additional drill targets on the LH property have been identified by a 2018 drone airborne magnetic survey to further evaluate a pyrrhotite-enriched gold-bearing system. Please visit our website at magnumgoldcorp.com.
MGX Minerals is revolutionizing the new energy economy with patented lithium extraction technology, replacing traditional solar evaporation using low-cost, low-energy nanofiltration. The first system of this paradigm shift technology is currently being commissioned. MGX Minerals trades on the CSE, symbol XMG, the OTCQB, symbol MGXMF, and Frankfurt, symbol 1MG. For more information, visit our website, mgxminerals.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Kris Sims. Kris, the deadly train derailment in eastern BC, 3 men dead on a CP train that was carrying grain, luckily, that went into a gorge. What if that had been carrying oil and our pipelines not so much safer when it comes to transporting dangerous goods?
Heaven forbid, right? First off, it just makes you sick. The loss of human life, the loss of people who were just out doing their job, it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. We see, of course, and depending on where you are in BC, I'm here in the Fraser Valley, we see trains rolling through town, I can't even count how many times a day. And they're hauling essential goods, everything from wheat to oil. And you see a lot of these railway men and women, they're working crazy hours in all sorts of weather. And so your heart just breaks for their families and their loved ones, and it's just a terrible thing to see. And then further to that, as you point out, what they were pulling behind them, it could have easily been oil, and it could have easily gone into a watershed or through a populated town, God forbid, and then you wind up with something like Lac Mégantic again. This is again why it is another reason to point out we know that people work very, very hard to keep things safe on the railways, but if you increase the freight traffic exponentially like this, your risk of having a derailment mathematically goes up. And based on what they're pulling, the risk of that stuff spilling or igniting will mathematically go up. And so why not remove at least that element of the risk and say, yes, for goodness sake, twin that pipeline that already runs. The Trans Mountain Pipeline's already in the ground, runs from Edmonton to Burnaby. The land is already there. Just twin it so you can at least take some of the burden off of the backs of the railway workers. Because right now, the pressure is just almost insurmountable. Apparently there are, trains and trains waiting on sidings all through especially Western Canada, trying to get all sorts of products to market. This is one of our arteries, and it's being used to transport oil when it doesn't have to. We have other alternative ways of transporting that oil. And so that is, again, one of the reasons why we must get this repeatedly federally approved pipeline expansion done.
Well, I'm thinking, too, taxpayers now own the pipeline. I thought the hearings that were ordered by the court should be done by now. Shouldn't we get a decision on whether they can go ahead, how they can go ahead? And I also wonder, would adding 1 or 2 ships a day extra to the traffic in the Marines in the Straits right now, how would that impact marine life? 1 or 2 ships more? How could it?
That's a great question. And we were told after the last, put down from a judge, that the feds were working on this quickly. That they said, yeah, we're working on it. We're going to reword it so that it fits with what the judge said. And we're trying to take them at face value because we're trying to be optimistic. And one of the things that the judge said was that the consultation needs to be meaningful. But what it didn't say is it didn't say that approval needs to be unanimous. She didn't say that. She said it needs to be meaningful consultation. And so we think that the feds, both the bureaucrats and the politicians, were working to change that language so that it is more meaningful. And we are seeing some movement, kind of in and around different parts of the Trans Mountain Pipeline route. But we aren't quite sure yet what kind of work is actually being done. But we need to see them really putting an emphasis on this. And we just don't see the fire in the belly coming from the feds like we want to. And frankly, the reason why we now own this thing is because they fumbled the ball repeatedly, over and over again. And so that's why our confidence is a bit shaky in the feds right now as far as the actual will to get this thing done and actually get it put through. And as far as the tanker traffic goes, we understand the concern. British Columbia is breathtakingly beautiful. We get it. But we also know that if you go stand next to the Port of Vancouver and look around, it's full of marine traffic. You know, it isn't like Ucluelet or something, or Tofino, where you're sitting there and all you can really see is the occasional fish boat and maybe a whale. That is a heavy industrial port. I mean, there is traffic going through there all the time, day and night. And so, yeah, having one or two extra ships a day, we can't really see how that is going to have a major impact. But again, we have a lot of very smart people that work at Fisheries and Oceans and at Environment Canada and at various levels of scientific bodies here in BC. There must be a way of helping to protect the marine mammals that everybody loves, including the orcas, the killer whale pod there, as was mentioned in the judgment and in that ruling. There's got to be a way of protecting that pod and getting our product out to market.
I've heard nobody respond to my thing where whales are getting hit by ships. It's not the whales can't hear the ships, but the engines are 1,000 feet away from the bow. How about putting a transponder in the bow that sounds just like the engine so the whales can get out of the way?
Or anything like that.
I mean, that's a pretty cheap solution.
And there's also, you know, I even had it was just such a neat way of putting it. This lady phoned me, really nice lady from the Fraser Valley. She just said, why don't we get the Coast Guard involved? And we have trackers on all these whales. Like, we know where they are. Have them team up, and she was just had an idea. It was a brainstorm. Have them team up so that we see their data as the Coast Guard. And if they're coming through, just do air traffic control.
Sure. Or have it show up on the radar screens.
So you can
little
see
transponders.
Them. Share the data. This is what I mean, is we're very creative and very intelligent people, both in government and out of government, in science and in, you know, marine shipment. We gotta be able to make this work.
So, Kris, between 3 people in the space of a minute, we have 3 solutions.
Right? Here we go.
We'll have more with Kris Sims right after this.
I'm Kelly Jennings, CEO of PowerBand Solutions. PowerBand is a cloud-based provider of auction, inventory, and finance solutions that make buying, selling, and financing vehicles more efficient. PowerBand Solutions trades on the TSX Venture Exchange symbol PBX and on the OTCQB symbol PWWBF and on Frankfurt symbol 1ZV. For more information, please visit us at powerbandsolutions.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Kris Sims. Kris, what do you think of this BC speculation tax where you have to declare I live in my house and I don't owe extra tax on it? I haven't received any forms yet. Is the government relying on people either not getting these negative billing forms or not understanding what they are and not sending them in so that they get extra tax revenue from unknowing, innocent people?
That's a risk, and that's a big risk because the math is not on their side here. If you take a look at it, I think the latest data was that they were sending out 1.6 million letters to BC homeowners in these affected regions, as they call them, and they were guessing that they were trying to find around 30,000 people or so. So 1.6 million, 30,000. There's going to be people that don't see it, that don't get it, that fall through the cracks, that are away, that are sick, their spouse is dead, you name it. There's going to be all sorts of complications to this. And the notion that the government has decided you are a speculator until proven otherwise based on your privately owned property is offensive.
Kris, what about my constitutional right to be presumed innocent?
This is the thing, and we think that this actually leads into some of the thinking that that property isn't really yours, that it's somehow the collectives or the government's by default, and they can tax you as they see fit, unless you can prove above and beyond a doubt that they can't get away with it. And that's where I think a lot of people feel this is unfair. Remember, of course, back when we had cable and phone providers that were attempting to do negative billing, people were out in the streets protesting it. people just find the idea of, hey, you're going to pay unless you jump through a whole bunch of hoops and prove you don't need to. They find the idea of negative billing to be unfair. They find it sneaky because it's taxation by default. You are now a speculator by default. And that really rubs people the wrong way. It doesn't feel right. And so that's where, we're just saying, guys, if you already knew that you had around 30,000 people that you're trying to find as speculators, when really what you're trying to do is find an empty homes tax or a way around that, then just work with the property management offices and the registrations and figure out who's who and send them the bills. Don't send every single British Columbian in highly populated areas who owns a home a speculator's bill.
Well, the government already has who owns your property, and then they have the voter registration. Just match them up by computer. No need to send any of this stuff out.
And this is the thing. The government already has an awful lot of data on you.
Oh, more than we can think, right?
Right? And they're trying to convince us that they need to have you sign up everything, including your SIN, including everybody that's named on the property, and get this every single year over year. Why? Why don't they just use the data they already have and send those suspected speculators the bill? You don't need to just be flooding everybody from Victoria to Kelowna with speculators' bills.
Well, personally, I'm offended that the government thinks I'm some kind of an offender.
This is the thing, too, is that it really rubs people the wrong way because in many cases, this is their home, it's their privately owned home.
Why don't they send everybody a speeding ticket?
Right, until they can prove they can't. Here's your photo radar ticket, prove this isn't your car.
No, send everybody a speeding ticket right now and then prove that you weren't on the road then.
This is the thing. This is the argument. And this is where I think if somebody wants to try to challenge this, they'd have a pretty darn good argument in court. So I'm actually surprised they went this route because it's very heavy-handed. And the risk for mistakes, quote unquote, and problems is very high. We're already hearing from people who say they've had their spouse unfortunately pass away. They're trying to get through. They're waiting for 40 minutes on the phone and it's not working.
Kris, we'll talk again.
You betcha. Thank you so much.
My guest has been Kris Sims, BC Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. Her website, taxpayer.com. Kris, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, how can they do it?
They can do that through taxpayer.com. That's the website. They can send me an email. It's ksims@taxpayer.com. Or the very best, on Twitter. I'm at Kris_Sims. Kris with a K.
You're listening to the Goddard Report on TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Find us on Twitter at TalkDigitalNet, our YouTube channel, Talk Digital Network. If you have questions for Kris or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.